Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar in partnership with Microsoft, Better Together Requirements and DevOps. We're going to give everyone just a few more minutes to trickle in, and then we'll get started. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar, Better Together Requirements and DevOps. There are a lot of you here today on one of our most popular webinars to date. So thank you all for joining and spending your morning with us today. We have a jam-packed hour ahead of us and a very special guest from Microsoft. On that note, Bob, if you don't mind advancing the slide. Today's speakers include myself and Breen as your host for today, Martina Heemstra, Director of Product Management at Microsoft, as well as Bob Savelson and Asif Sharif, who are joining us from the Modern Requirements team. Just quickly in terms of today's agenda, like I mentioned, it's a jam-packed schedule. So Bob will start us off with a brief introduction on modern requirements, followed by a few poll questions just to understand today's audience a little bit better. Then we'll pass it over to Martina for her presentation on new features and capabilities of Azure DevOps, as well as future plans. And then we'll wrap it up with a demo of modern requirements for DevOps by Asif. As always, if you've joined these webinars before, you know that we like to leave a good chunk of time for questions at the end. So please feel free to drop them in the question box. Just before we begin, a few housekeeping items. We always send out the webinar recording afterwards. So if you're unable to stay for the full hour or just want to share it with your team, you'll have it in your inbox by tomorrow at the latest. It will also be available on our website along with all of our other webinars. Like I mentioned, we'll have about 15 minutes towards the end reserved for Q&A, so please drop any questions throughout the session or towards the end in the question box in your control panel on the right-hand side. We also have a feedback survey that will pop up in your browser as soon as the webinar is completed. If you have a second, please complete the survey. It's very short, but it really helps us improve these webinars moving forward. And lastly, if you are not a current customer of Modern Requirements, you can always visit the link on the screen, and I'll drop it in the chat box as well. And you can get a free 30-day trial of Modern Requirements. It's a really great way to try it out and see if it's right for your team. And throughout this webinar, you'll also get a better sense of the many features and capabilities of Modern Requirements for DevOps. So if at all that's piqued your interest, please feel free to visit the link on the screen and you can start your free trial. All right, I'll pass it over to you, Bob.
Thanks, Ambreen, and welcome everyone. I see quite a few familiar names and a few new ones, so welcome to all. We are thrilled to be delivering this presentation with Martina from Microsoft, and very pleased to see the number of people who have made this topic an important one for their companies. Modern Requirements, for those of you that don't know us, has been helping clients optimize their requirements processes through ingenious automation for over 20 years. We've been a gold certified Microsoft partner for well over half of that time. Azure DevOps supports millions of organizations today in managing their DevOps work. The tool includes capabilities like Azure boards, pipelines, repos, test plans, and artifacts to support the project workflows. However, as many of our clients and prospective clients have found, Azure DevOps presents some gaps in functionality that are considered critical for regulated companies, product engineering organizations, and essential for many others. Some of the gaps listed on this slide are being filled manually today by many of our clients using Office products or separately in other disconnected tools. These approaches not only consume a lot of time, they are prone to human error and difficult to manage. And that brings us to the theme of this webinar, Better Together, Modern Requirements and Azure DevOps acting in unison to support our clients' processes. This is a list of some of the top issues that our clients experience today in requirements processes, and they're addressing them however they can. Any of these look familiar to you? Generally, when we present this slide, clients say yes, a little bit of all, or focus on a number of them, but generally they're omnipresent in most of our clients' environments. Modern Requirements for DevOps and Azure DevOps together solve each of those issues and help our clients achieve the three goals that are listed on this slide. Through automation at various stages of your project lifecycle, the tool helps to dramatically shorten cycle times. Clients have reported up to a 50% productivity improvement in their requirements process by using our tool. Through online collaboration and through our review tool, clients have found that the review function and the approval function of their requirements can be reduced in time by as much as 30%, thereby increasing the flow of value through the chain. And finally, through requirements reuse and adding visuals to textual requirements and presenting an integrated view, our clients have dramatically reduced their development rework. These objectives can be achieved in all types of client environments: Agile Scrum, Scaled Agile, Waterfall, or Hybrid. The tool can support the creation of requirements for software projects, for hardware products, and for hybrid products containing software, hardware, and maybe even firmware. So the tool is very flexible. From an architecture perspective, Modern Requirements is an extension of Azure DevOps, and it's embedded in the user interface of ADO. It's browser-based and uses ADO as the database, supports single sign-on, and inherits whatever process template in ADO you would like to use. And you can use multiple process templates, whether they're out of the box or highly customized. Everything is stored natively as work items in Azure DevOps, providing a single source of truth for our clients. Microsoft Excel and Teams are integrated natively into Azure DevOps, and they provide rich functionality to add to your project life cycles. And the tool supports all ADO repos, including TFVC, Git, and GitHub in a hybrid type of environment. And Martina will expand on that GitHub hybrid implementation later in the presentation. Modern Requirements provides many layers of functionality and fills all the gaps that I previously had identified. The layers add functionality as you go to Modern Requirements, and the first layer includes our unique document-based online authoring module called Smart Docs, and its sister, Smart Reporting, in which you can produce highly customized output documents in Word or PDF. The next layer provides the auditability tools that are essential for many organizations. The visualization layer adds the ability to create models or wireframes and merge them with textual requirements in an integrated view to be more easily consumed downstream. The efficiency optimizers provide for an enterprise library to reuse requirements in multiple projects, and FAQ to manage and define the tricky non-functional requirements. Most clients start with maybe 3 to 6 modules in their initial implementation to focus on the essential issues that they would like resolved, and then add modules as they expand from there. When we say better together, the statement is based on many real-life client examples of clients who have leveraged our integrated platform to achieve some very enviable results that we're showing here in this infographic. This value can be realized relatively quickly. Some instantly, like our trace analysis, can be set up and configured and produce reports with a click of a button in a matter of days. And others may take a few months to have people proficient with the tool and really experience that 50% productivity improvement or the reduction in reviews as your users get comfortable with the tool. As the platform is very broad and deep, it provides points of value to many roles within your product lifecycle. Layer Azure DevOps on top of Modern Requirements, and the solution provides value to virtually all DevOps participants and stakeholders. Finally, what's most important to us is what our clients think about the tool and about working with Modern Requirements. These are some key data points from a very recent industry survey on requirements tools conducted by Infotech and Software Reviews. Our tool was rated the #1 requirements tool against all other major vendors, with one other ALM tool, not a requirements tool, appearing in the leader quadrant with us. We're very proud that Modern Requirements was rated 9 out of 10 by our clients, with 100% of them saying that they plan to renew their subscriptions, and a whopping 88% saying they would recommend our tool to others. The data also shows that we were rated significantly above industry average in categories like product features and vendor capabilities. And those capabilities, in what they call the emotional footprint, include things like ongoing support, usability, and value created. And software reviews mentioned to us, after having looked at our results, that they have never seen an emotional footprint of 97% in any of their previous research. So we're quite pleased with these results and wanted to share them with you hot off the press. So I hope I've provided a broad overview of our platform and explained why Modern Requirements and Azure DevOps are better together. Before we move on to the other presenters, we'd like to get to know our audience a little bit better and have 3 polling questions to ask. I'll post a question, provide 10 or 15 seconds for the audience to respond, and then share the results with you. So let me start. We're up over 60% of responses. So we're now at 70%, and 55% of respondents said that they use Azure DevOps, 7% GitHub, and 23% use both. Only 7% of the audience said neither, and 8 said, I don't know. So that is kind of what we would have expected. The next poll asks how you run your projects, and let's focus that on the requirements part of your projects. We're up around 65%, almost 70%. All right, so we're at about 75%, and 40% of respondents say they follow an Agile Scrum approach. 9% say Agile and Scale, 11% Waterfall, 2% V model, and 37% hybrid. So that's a distribution that we have seen before from previous audiences. So thank you for those responses. And then our final question. What does your company use for requirements tools today? We're up around 65% voted. Okay, so we've surpassed 70%, and we have a fair amount of modern requirements clients on the webinar. 20% use Azure DevOps and modern requirements. 24% use Azure DevOps and Microsoft Office. 7% use Azure DevOps only. 31% use Microsoft Office only. And 18% use something else. So that is a very interesting distribution across all of the tools that have been listed. So thank you very much for your feedback. And I will close the polls and hand the presentation over to Martina. Martina, the podium is yours.
Great, thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Martina, and I'm Director of Product Management in Azure DevOps. And I want to acknowledge that Microsoft and Modern Requirements have been partners for over 10 years. Bob kind of touched on it in his presentation, but I just want to add to that. It's been a really good partnership where we work together to ensure that Modern Requirements is extending functionality for Azure DevOps, it's not duplicating it, and that we're looking forward to a continued partnership together. So thanks, Bob. All right. So I'm excited to be here today and share some updates from Azure DevOps. So specifically, I'm going to cover the latest priorities in Azure DevOps, talk about connected experiences, also known as hybrid scenarios, and collaboration. The poll was interesting there. I think you'll find some good collaboration between Office and Teams and Azure DevOps, so I'll show that real quick. And then I'm going to end it with a demo of delivery plans, which is a road mapping tool, and this is one of the latest features that we have delivered for Azure DevOps. So moving into top priorities. So these are the top priority areas for Azure DevOps. And I want to start with a top priority for us is always top customer requests. And the focus is on requests from top enterprise customers. Azure DevOps scales and is part of the enterprise. So we really focus on those requests coming in from top enterprise customers. We also have an active community where customers actually make requests and the community votes on them. So that comes into our intake system as well. And finally, we also work with key partners like Modern Requirements to ensure that solutions are meeting customer needs. Another top priority area is security and compliance. With all the latest breaches like SolarWinds and the other things you see in the news, security is always #1 at Microsoft, and we continue to invest in that area so that enterprises have a secure and productive environment. Accessibility. So the Web Consortium Accessibility Group, also known as WCAG, has a 2.1 standard. And this is a really important standard to comply with, to help with all accessibility needs. And many of our customers, all of our customers have a diverse workforce, and so we're really investing in that area so we meet that need. And how that's going to show up is in the user experience. You'll see a more modernized experience. So as part of meeting accessibility standards, we're incorporating some modernization in the UI. And you may have seen this last year. We did that with the repos user experience. So next up is boards. And then finally, connected experiences, also known as hybrid scenarios. So these are connected experiences between Azure DevOps and GitHub and beyond. And I'll go into more detail on this area later. So let's get into more details. Azure DevOps continues to invest in features for the enterprise, and what you're seeing here is our public roadmap of customer-facing work. And this is updated every quarter so customers know what has been delivered and what's planned. The item shown below, it's shown in calendar quarters, and it shows you what's been delivered this quarter and what we're planning for next quarter. This is always available to you as customers in that URL link. So I'm not going to read every single item, but I want to highlight a few of them. First of all is, of course, delivery plans, which is now generally available. This was a one-year investment for the enterprise that provides road mapping tools, and this is the feature I'll be demoing in just a few minutes. So security continues to be a top priority, as you saw previously. And here we're restricting personal access tokens, their scope and lifespan. And this is to really, reduce that surface area of attack for security through personal access tokens. So a lot of work going on there. And then finally, copy dashboard. This has been a long-standing customer request to copy existing dashboards to other teams and projects. This just went into public preview and will become generally available later in the year. So feel free to try that feature out as well. So connected experiences and hybrid scenarios. So this is a priority area where we continue to invest. And, what is a connected experience? What is a hybrid scenario? So these are integrations between Azure DevOps and GitHub. And I prefer the word connected experience because it brings the best of them together. And we're investing in this area to make that experience more seamless. And we actually have current scenarios available that are enabled, like connecting your Azure boards to GitHub repositories. You can link Azure board work items to GitHub issues, pull requests, and commits. You can use Azure pipelines to build from GitHub repositories. And you can also create a GitHub release with the Azure pipeline. So you see they're more and more connected there. In the future, we have additional scenarios that we want to enable. So connecting the Azure DevOps server. So this is our on-premise offering of Azure DevOps, being able to connect that to github.com. We want to improve the overall connection experience between GitHub and Azure DevOps, and then have a richer planning experience with Azure boards. And this would allow developers who are developing in GitHub to continue to use their tool set while we bring issues into Azure boards, which can be a source of truth for a plan all up. So those are some of the investments that we have going on. And I wanted to highlight too, since it looks like we have a lot of Office users, and hopefully that includes Teams. And Azure DevOps does does integrate with Microsoft Teams, and there's some really rich integrations there, which really helps with collaboration. And I'm sure many of you've experienced having to work remote over the past year, which can make collaboration a challenge. And Microsoft Teams has really helped bridge that gap. And for our Azure DevOps users, you can bring your Kanban boards and dashboards directly into Microsoft Teams. So, you can imagine you can run the daily stand-up from Teams, and then you could walk the Kanban board to get your daily status. And if you need to check things like the velocity or other status of your release or project you're working on, that dashboard can be part of that Teams channel. So it's a great way for teams to come together into one place. So it's a great integration to leverage. So Staying on the theme of better together, so just want to highlight that Azure DevOps and GitHub together are trusted by enterprises. We enable those connected experiences. It's home to some top world open source projects, and it's loved by developers. So it is better together. So now I'm going to move into the demo. So I'm really excited to show this feature off. This, as I mentioned earlier, has been a one-year investment for the Azure DevOps team. This is a road mapping tool that provides a timeline view of a project or plan. Again, a major investment over the past year, and also add that it's addressed a long-standing customer request. So what are the scenarios? So these are the three key scenarios we're delivering with delivery plans. So the first is the timeline view of the plan. And this is about how long is the plan taking? So when does it start? When will it be completed? The progress view of a plan. So how are you tracking the work? You know, are we on track or not? And then dependency tracking. This is understanding the dependencies across teams and projects. So let's get into it. So delivery plans is available here on the left navigation bar underneath the board service. And if you click on it, you'll get the list of existing plans. And to create a new plan, you just click on the new plan button here. And that'll bring up the new plan dialog. You just fill in the name and the description. And here you enter in the backlogs of the teams that you want to cover in the plan. You just do that by clicking Add Team. And up to 15 different backlogs from different projects and teams within your organization can be added to the plan. So you click Create, and that'll create the plan. So I have an existing plan, and what you're seeing here is that first scenario. This is a timeline view of the plan, the first scenario I was describing. And in this plan, it has epics up here, and then 3 teams who are working on features for those epics. So these are the 3 teams that are working on features that are tied to those epics. You can click on the expand and collapse icon to get this view. That's this one right here. And then you can also zoom in and out on your plan to get it to the right view level that works best for you. At the top here, we have markers. In the waterfall terminology, those are milestone markers. These are key dates that you want to rally the team around or the project around. And it's a nice way to focus the plan on key dates. And you can define those markers in the plan settings. So I'm going to expand this view. And this brings us to the next scenario, which is the progress view. And here you can see for epic number 1 here that 33% of the features linked to the epic are complete, and 78% of the user stories linked to those features are complete. And that percentage complete is helpful in understanding if the plan is on track or not. And if you go down here, if we look here at the Bumblebees team, you can see the same percentage complete. This one's 100% complete. And it's based on the user stories that are linked to that feature. And the point here is that the percentage complete works at all levels of the hierarchy. So if you're using stories and tasks, features, user stories, epics, whatever level that you've defined for your backlog, it works. And as you're working on a plan, you may find you need to change the dates of the feature. That happens all the time when you're doing planning. So for example, we have an amazing feature here, feature 195 that needs to be pushed out by a month. So I can drag and drop that into the next iteration. And here you see it in the next iteration. Those dates are updated automatically. You don't have to do anything different. It'll update the iteration or the start date and target date, whichever method you're using. And then you can continue to work within the plan. You're not navigated to another dialog box or back different views. So you can do all your work within the plan. Pretty cool. So card styling. Card styling is a popular feature with our Kanban boards, and we've brought that to delivery plans. So to style a card, you click within the plan settings, you just click on styles and add a rule. So here we have a rule for architecture work, and then you add a color to it. So again, in this example, it's a light blue color that's been added for all architecture work. And once you're done, you just click on save. And voila, you have a colored plan here. And you can see all the work that's tied to architecture. It's a great way to visualize work. Dependency tracking. So this is our final scenario for delivery plans. And first, in Azure DevOps, dependencies between work items are defined with predecessor and successor links. And those links must be defined in order for dependency tracking to work. So through the presentation so far, you may have noticed the red icons on the plan and wondering, what are they? Well, those are dependency icons. And when they are colored red, there is an issue. The red icons help visualize where issues are. And to see where the dependencies are, you can click on the bottom of a card. So I'll click here on the bottom of Epic 23. And you can see the lines. So when you click on the bottom, all the dependency lines for that work item are displayed. The red colored lines with an X in them indicate an issue. The black colored lines indicate there's no issue. The lines will display across teams and projects, and you can see that here. We have features here in the Green Giant team, and here in the Bumblebee team, so it does cross projects. So to see the details of a work item, you can click on the dependency icon here, and that will bring up the dependency panel, and it will show the dependency, all the dependencies for that work item and its children. So if you features link to an Epic, for example, any dependencies that the features have will show up in this panel. And in this example, we see that feature that the Epic has a predecessor dependency on feature 119, and you can see that its end date comes after the Epic's end date. So work needs to be resequenced there. And again, you can see the dependencies on other Epics and features. And this is super useful for planning. I'm sure you've been in planning meetings, planning increment meetings where you need to find out dependencies or have them logged in. This is a great way to see them. So that brings me to the end of the demo, and want to say, hey, try using delivery plans for your next plan, and that feedback is always welcome, and happy planning. Thanks, everyone. And now, Asif.
Hey, folks. Thank you, Martina. I'm going to demonstrate some of the key capabilities of modern requirements. Obviously, Microsoft continues to invest considerably on Azure DevOps, and it is an awesome product. And modern requirements sits on top of it. So you will see within the left menu, from smart docs to reporting are all part of modern requirements. So typically what happens is you may define your requirements or different work items through backlog or just through the new, the plus button there and create your work item types. I'm using a BA Bach Agile template for the demo, but modern requirements inherits the process template from Azure DevOps. So if you have new work item, new properties, that simply gets inherited. All our data is stored in Azure DevOps, as well as we inherit the security model from Azure DevOps, and you also get single sign-on because of that. Now, I'm going to talk about three things in particular today. One is smart docs, the other is diagramming, and the third one is trace analysis. So smart doc is really a bridge between document and work item management. And as such, what you're doing with smart docs is you have the ability to define your specifications with work items. So in this particular document, you will see there's an introduction, there are diagrams in it, there is an overview, there's a scope statement, and there's a epic, features, stories, and so on and so forth. Okay. So within a smart doc, you can have many different types of work items. And if I look at the outline view and enable my work item type, you can see the structure of the work item. Okay. And so depending on where you are, you can then decide what work item you want to create within a smart doc. So you can create work items directly within the smart doc. And of course, if you create a user story, you'll see it in the backlog view. Or anywhere else that you would see it within Azure DevOps, because this is a first-class citizen work item in Azure DevOps. But the other thing you can do is you can insert existing work items. So I can simply search or run a query and drag and drop my work items and bring them into the smart doc. The advantage of Smart Doc is that instead of opening every work item and reading the details of it, you can view the artifacts that you're interested in, either in a sprint artifact or a product specification or whatever it may be, as though it were a document. But these are first-class citizen work items within Azure DevOps. So instead of following links and trying to put it together, this is a much more user-friendly interface to define your requirements or your design specs or your risk hazard analysis or whatever you're doing. Now in Smart Doc, you will see that depending on where I am, I see different options that will appear for me. And since I see different options, the question is how do you configure it? So within Smart Docs, there is this meta template designer, and the meta template designer basically will outline the structure of your document. And you can include any and all work items. You can also specify which link types you want to follow. So for test case, I might want to use a tested by link type, linking a story to a test case. So users don't have to know the link types they have to use. Smart Doc template inherently is now configured to show that or to use that, as well as you can configure what properties you want to see within a Smart Doc. And thus, most of our clients will create a few of these Smart Doc templates and use them within their projects. The other thing you can do is you can version your Smart Docs. So you can create multiple versions of a Smart Doc. You can open up previous versions and see how things look like at a point in time. And you can export this to Word or PDF of the version or the current state, or you can compare it. And in comparison, in this particular case, it's doing a comparison between V1 and the current state and showing you in a red line view of what's changed. So if you go to the history of the work item, you typically will see a change log. But if you want to see a detailed comparison, this view is similar to a Word change track view, and thus is much more user-friendly to see the changes. You can also save this to Word or PDF along with the redlining. Within Smart Docs, you can also insert or create your own diagrams. And so if you double click it, it'll open up the diagram editor. And in the diagram editor, you can actually create your diagrams. So here's a swim lane diagram, and you can drill down in a variety of other things, which I'll cover later on. But the ability to provide all the appropriate context in order to understand what needs to be done and what are the related information makes Smart Docs not only easier for the authors, your product owners and requirements engineers, business analysts, but also for people who are consuming the data to consume the data much more efficiently. Now, you can also review, you can initiate a review of your Smart Docs. And what review does is basically you can send the documents for feedback, or you could send it for approval. You can even request e-signature as part of the process. So not only can you create your Smart Docs, of course, based on work items, but you can also review it, get feedback, get approval, get sign off on these work items, or the Smart Doc as a whole. Now, let's pivot to looking at a little bit more in diagramming. So under the diagramming hub here, you've got your diagrams. I've got a couple of diagrams here. This is the same swim lane that we have in the document. So the same diagrams can be inserted into multiple documents if you like. And what I can do here is I can go ahead and I can say I want to. So when you see this D here, that means there's a drill down to a diagram against this node. And if I do edit, it simply drills down into the lower level process. Okay, so you can tier your process models and have them all connected. Now, in addition to that, we have got a variety of different stencils. So in this example, I used vertical swim lanes, and then I used the basic flow shapes to create the process model. But of course, there are various stencils you can use. You can annotate things and so on and so forth. But more than creating a pretty picture, because diagrams are very important, a lot of people are visual like me. I like to draw a diagram to set the context and then use that as the basis to define other information. So now what you can do is you can go to the link tab and you can actually create work items against individual shapes. So I could go here and I could say, okay, you know what, this is the error message I should see. Or I can go here and I can say, after 3 failed attempts, log the account for 5 minutes, or whatever the case may be. So you can actually define your requirements being inspired and on top of your diagrams. In fact, if you click on this little icon, this will color code in green everything that actually has work items linked to it. So everything else is an opportunity that is not in green. Okay. And so if you want to create a work item against the shape, you just go here. If you want to link existing ones, you go there. Now, beyond just creating a diagram, you can also perform analysis on it. So in the analysis, the system will detect, to begin with, scenarios. So the system detected 3 scenarios. I've published all scenarios. You see, if you worked on individual activities, then that would be reasonable that every step works. But you see, steps working is not good enough. You need to get the flow to work as well. And so you want to identify your user stories that actually cover the integration of various smaller stories. I'm calling it a scenario in this case. So when you publish it, it actually will create a work item for you with the narrative based on the flow and the visual to show what flow this user story supports, and the lower level requirements are being linked to it as well. So in this way, the system helps you identify all the scenarios, and with a click of a button, you can publish it. Similarly, if you're doing Agile at scale, you might want to define your use case and your scenarios. And so here I've named the scenarios. I click publish, and it created my use case artifact. So in this case, this is the use case along with the visual. So all the scenarios are actually within the same work item. And here are all the lower level requirements that the use case covers. And finally, you can have the system detect all the test cases, like so. Okay. So now what happens is the system is detecting all the test cases. So i.e., find all starting points and all pathways to all endpoints is the logic that's implementing. Of course, this is a simple scenario. There are 4 test cases. If you had a complex scenario, you might have 20 test cases or more. The system identifying this then allows you to click publish and just create the test case with a click of a button. And when you do create the test case, you end up with all your test steps, the requirements that are covered by in each test scenario, and a visual to show you the logic behind it. So in this particular example, I'm going through a failed login before succeeding. I'm going through a failed login, and then upon third failed attempt, I'm going to log the account. That's the test case there. And likewise, there are other test cases. So it takes a lot of effort to create these test cases, and often people miss out on test scenarios. So modern requirements actually makes the process of identifying test cases much more user-friendly and accurate and efficient. So if you are visual, or your systems require models like this one, you'll find that instead of creating your process in one tool and then creating your user stories, say in Azure DevOps, or creating your scenarios and someone else creating test cases as fragmented artifacts, now you can build everything on a strong foundation of your business process model, and then have everything generate from it. So it has a common source, and thus more efficient and more accurate. So that's for the diagramming component. The third component I want to quickly touch on is traceability. So there are 2 types of traceability. There is the horizontal traceability matrix. In this, I'm showing how epics are broken up into features, how features are decomposed into stories, what are the test cases linked to given stories, and what are the bugs against them. You can then generate a smart report from here or export to Excel. A smart report can be saved to Word or PDF. You can configure your trace analysis from here. And you can also do cross-project traceability. The other type of traceability matrix you have is called the intersection matrix. In the intersection matrix, you give it 2 dimensions. Here, I'm giving it test cases versus bugs. And I can see which test case has what bugs. You can do user stories versus test cases, and then see what the coverage there is, or whatever you want. You can also overlay your test results based on requirements-based test suites. You can also say, just show me my test cases that actually have bugs against them. So don't show me those don't. So these are all things that have to be worked on. You can export this to Excel as well. But of course, if you're doing requirements to test cases, you'd actually do no links and find all requirements that don't have test cases. So depending on how you configure this, you will do the appropriate types of analysis. But it is very easy to set up. And so you might set up a bunch of them for different types of analysis. We a few months ago released a traceability matrix that supports test plan to test suites to test runs, reporting that also further goes to test results. That's execution of each test case, as well as test step result. Okay. So now, and you know that test steps, test results, or test runs are actually not work items. They are stored differently in the test database. So we've created virtual work items and virtual links so you can treat them for reporting purposes as though they were work items. And again, you can configure this to however you need to through the editor tab, where you can configure all of these. You can configure what columns you want in your trace matrix. And similarly, from the test hub, you can now run Smart Report, where you can pull out your test run on every test plan, test suite, and look at what's passing, what's failing, including at the step level, and see linked bugs and so on and so forth. And again, through the designer is where you configure your reports. Of course, what you're going to see is most of the time, people are simply going to configure these reports once, and everybody else will simply reuse them because you don't have to redefine it every time you want to run it. So that's those are three of the capabilities of modern requirements. There are many others, such as baselining, building out an enterprise library for reuse, and simulation, and so on and on. So we've got a variety of different function points. But really, the idea is, if you're using Azure DevOps and you're looking at requirements management, and you want to provide a more a user-friendly interface for all the stakeholders, you'll find tools like Smart Docs or diagramming are extremely valuable. Then you can use review management to get your documents approved or feedback on. You can use trace analysis for audit purposes or just from a quality perspective, and so on and so forth. So that's a quick overview of modern requirements. And over to you, Bob.
Thanks, Asif. So we've reached the end of the presentations, and now we'd like to get into the question and answer. So there is a question mechanism on the controls. So if you would like to pose your questions to anybody on the panel, we'd be happy to answer them. We have a few questions that are sent already, so let's see if we can get some answers. The first question is, if I approve a requirement, and this is for Asif, if I approve a requirement or user story included in a Smart Doc, can I trace or view the version of the document that was approved?
Yes. So if you go to the review, you will actually see for a given version of the Smart Doc in the review, you will see the approvals that were given. That's one. Two, you can also navigate from the work item to all the reviews that it was part of. So you can go to a particular review from a given Smart Doc, and then go to it and look at the exact version, do comparisons, do a redlining, and exactly see what changed between a version of Smart Doc and the other. And so the ability to navigate to a specific review is how you would do that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is also for Asif, and it's around the diagramming. So if there is a change to a process diagram, would it show what feature stories that could be affected by this change?
Yeah, so that's really a function of, so if I go to the diagram and I want to make a change here, you can see at any time, depending on the activity you are linked to, as to what are the areas that would get impacted. So that's one way to actually do this, is to look at the change in the diagram or whatever activity you're doing, what the impact would be in changing this. You can also see that at the macro level. So this particular login is linked to all of these work items, and therefore changing the process would possibly impact any and all of these linked work items.
Thank you. Next question. The flows that you're showing are quite small. Would it handle an 80-step flow?
So yes, you can do an 80-step flow. Of course, yes, you could. It would handle that. However, what I would recommend is, well, it depends on the scenario, but what you might want to do is to break it up so that it is digestible. And if that's possible, then you would create a drill down option and let people just sort of look at the macro view and then do a second tier and a third tier. But of course, you could make a very large process model if you like.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, will this tool have a customized template that suits an organization?
Say that again, Bob?
Will this tool let you use the customized template that suits your organization?
Yeah, so there are templates available in a lot of different areas. So if you're looking at Smart Docs, as I talked about it, you can create your own customized templates. If you generate reports, you can define your own customized templates. Of course, within Azure DevOps, you can create your own templates of the process template. So I think the approach that Azure DevOps and Modern Requirements have taken is that because we have a variety of different types of user base, the system has to be configurable. And generally, it's done through either configuration tools or through creating of different types of templates.
Okay, thank you. The next question, again, is for Asif. I have a project that is a platform. The deliverables from this project end up in multiple projects where each project can have unique requirements. How does Modern Requirements handle this? And does your traceability provide a view to ensure that requirements are tracked across all those projects?
Yes, yes. So the answer is yes. The trace analysis, the traceability matrix you saw, can be configured for cross-project traceability. So you could go and configure this using the query-based option, which will actually allow you to create cross-project traceability. In terms of when you have a platform and there are multiple projects in it, you've got two primary design approaches. You could have a separate Azure DevOps project for each of your projects, and the Azure DevOps account is your platform. Alternatively, you can have one project in ADO and create different teams for each project. And just FYI, every team has its own backlog. Every team would have its own Smart Docs and diagrams and so on. So it's almost like a sub-project construct in terms of how you would organize it.
Great, thank you. Here's a question for Martina. What is the long-term future of Modern Requirements in Azure DevOps, particularly with GitHub acquisition by Microsoft? I already see the number of items being implemented, in my opinion, being lesser than the Azure DevOps compared to the GitHub implementation.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So in terms of the partnership between Microsoft and Modern Requirements, that remains strong. We continue to partner with Modern Requirements. You know, as we evolved Azure DevOps and GitHub, I know Modern Requirements, we saw in Bob's earlier presentation, you know, Modern Requirements works with github.com. So that partnership will continue. We consider Modern Requirements a key strategic partner.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question again on diagramming for Asif. Could you overlay architectural components with process diagrams, i.e. microservices?
So I'm not sure what you mean by overlay, but what you can do is you can do a top-level model, say something like this, which is showing your major services and how they're connecting, and then you could create a drill down on it to go into individual microservices and show its process model. So if that's what you mean by overlay, then absolutely yes.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Maybe start with Asif and see if Martina can add something, because the question is, does Azure DevOps or Modern Requirements have plans to implement a branching strategy for requirements management and other work item management? The aim is to introduce some variability in the requirements to support.
So right. So from a Modern Requirements point of view, we support a few functions from a branching point of view. So you can actually create, you can copy work items. You can take a collection of work items, you can copy them, and the copying will maintain the structural integrity of the linking between work items in the new set within the same project or across projects. You can also create a library and branch from a library, so that it knows where it came from. So the linking between the source and the target is also established, and the hierarchy is maintained. And you can also do some merging of the work items. The other thing that we recently rolled out was parameterized requirements. And it is an alternate use case for variant management or branching. And the idea there was that, what if I have requirements details that actually the details are slightly different? So if I'm making a table that's 3 feet by 2 feet versus 6 feet by 3 feet, the specs are generally the same, but the length and length with height is different. So you just parameterize that. So the same requirements, when looked at from a different product's perspective, you see it morph into the specification of that product. So that's parameterized requirements, which is sort of, again, an alternate to branching mechanism of work items.
And I'll just add from the Azure DevOps point of view that it's more of a platform point of view that we support that copying of the integrity of the structures underneath it. So those branching strategies can work from the platform point of view.
Thank you both. We have a few more questions. Keep the questions coming, because we'll be happy to stay on and answer them for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Next question is, I'm looking at my Azure DevOps and I cannot see the functionalities you're showing. Is there a way to enable these new features? I will take that question. We need to enable our software in your Azure DevOps account. So in order for us to enable it, there is a try it free on our website in a number of ways, places on our website. If you simply click on that and give us the URL of your Azure DevOps account, we will enable our software, and then you can add it from within the tool very easily. The next question is, my organization uses both Agile and Waterfall. How flexible is modern requirements to accommodate both? Asif, can you answer that, please?
Surely. So modern requirements is process template agnostic. So we do support Agile, Waterfall, Scrum, BA-BOK, Agile, compliance template, vModel, and so on. So our system is agnostic to the process template. You can use any of those process templates. In fact, you can even mix and match those process templates within the same project or across projects as well. So the critical thing is that all you have to do is to configure your process template based on your nomenclature and what you're trying to do. And modern requirements will work with that regardless of the approach you take.
Thank you. Next question, is there a feature to trace work items based on link type?
Yes, so there's two parts to the answer for this. Of course, within Azure DevOps, you can link work items to other work items using different link types. When you want to do reporting, for example, if you're doing trace analysis reporting, it then looks at the link types you've configured for it to consider. So if I look at this trace matrix, you'll see I've selected all link types for my trace analysis, or I can choose specific ones. And so, yes, you can link things using any link type that's appropriate, but you can also then generate reports. So for example, in this report, I have an epic that has children. This has further children, but there are some related links. And then further to that, I've got test cases here, which are tested by link type and related link type. So in trace analysis, you can actually zigzag through different work items following different link types to pull the trace analysis together, and then you can run generate a document from it as well, or save it as Excel.
Thank you. And there was an addition to that question, or a correction, as the person said. Is there a feature to suspect work items based on link type?
Yes. So modern requirements does have a suspect links capability. So you can configure the rules to identify suspects. So what you can say is this: if certain work item types that are in certain states and certain fields change, then certain linked work items to certain work item types should be marked as suspects.
Great, thank you. This is an interesting question. How do you link the execution of a test case to a specific build?
Martina, do you want to take that?
Oops, there, having trouble with my mute button. Could you repeat the question, Bob?
How do you link the execution of a test case to a specific build?
You should be able to do that within Azure DevOps. I'm trying to, oh, I guess I can't demo it real quick. Yeah, so how do you link the execution of a test case to a specific build? When you're running the build, you can tie the test cases right there and then to the build. So there is a link type for builds in there. So as you're setting up your build, you can link your test cases to that, and you can add automation in there to actually run them. So it's on the build side.
Okay, thank you. This is also an interesting question. Can you use the version function of a smart doc to have two versions of a requirements document? Like have one version that is a working document and the other version, the approved document, and promote certain parts of the working document to the approved document. It's an interesting paradigm.
So you can have, of course, multiple versions of a smart doc. Certain versions of the smart doc might be approved versus the current version, say, it's not approved. If you want to approve the current version, you'll have to do another review request to get it approved. It doesn't inherit the approval from previous versions of the smart doc. Because of course something changes, the context has changed. And therefore the document needs to be reviewed again within the new context of the changes.
Okay, thank you. Here's a two-part question. Is there an option to link automatically work items to releases and produce a report including all the work items in a release?
Yeah, so from the Azure DevOps perspective, it depends how you're defining your release. If it's based on an iteration, you can generate a query to pull all the work items for it. You can create a dashboard that pulls all the items for a release. So yeah, there's some different ways to do that.
Yeah, and just on top of that, if you do run a query, then from the query you can use Smart Report to generate a document for that release. We are also currently implementing the ability for you to generate a Smart Report or trace analysis that goes all the way from change sets to or commits to source files to work items as within the hierarchy. So we're creating actually virtual work items for commits and change sets and all that. So that'll be coming out this fall, I hope.
Thank you both for that. And one last interesting question here. There's a request about moving Azure DevOps projects from one account to another. So let me read it clearly. The request is to move the project from one organization to another. This has not been implemented for many years. Work item migration together with links is a big headache and is actually preventing my organization from using ADO extensively. So this is something that we are helping a couple of clients with today as modern requirements to help move from TFS or Azure DevOps Server to Azure DevOps. And there's some tools that are part of that. Martina, Asif, do you have anything that you would like to add to that answer?
Yeah, from the Azure DevOps side, yes, I hear this a lot, and thank you for calling out that it is highly voted on. Bob, as you've said that there are some tools available now, in particular if you're moving from on-prem to cloud, there are tools. There are also some open source tools to help with that migration. And from a product point of view, we'll continue to look at it to see when's the, what's the right investment to make there.
Yeah, and from a modern requirements point of view, if you're moving from on-prem to cloud, of course, you can use the migration tool Microsoft currently has to move your whole ADO on-prem to the cloud. and modern requirements also supports a full migration. But there have been some new use cases we are seeing where people are not migrating the whole Azure DevOps on-prem to the cloud, where they're doing project-wise. And we're actually building a utility right now to actually support that use case as well.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. And this will be the last question. I know I said the last one was, but does the tool, especially for the diagramming feature, integrate with Blue Prism for the purpose of process automation? And the short answer is no, not today. We do integrate with Visio, and anything that can be converted in a Visio format. We have a tool that can import that. But I'm not familiar with Blue Prism. Any additional comments, Asif?
No, I think that is correct. So if you had Visio, then yeah, we've got a Visio extension for doing the same thing I showed you online. Otherwise, a lot of people, what they do is they'll take screenshots from their other tools and simply embed it within their smart docs. So it's kind of a manual way of doing it, but you can certainly get that information in there if you want to use other tools.
Okay, thank you. And given that Peggy, who's a longtime customer, asked one last question, we should give her an answer. Do the migration tools allow for test manager, test plan suites, and I'm assuming steps, test cases to move from one project to another? So test plans, test suites, test cases.
Yeah, so it depends if you're going from on-prem to cloud. Yeah, that tool should cover both, and some of the open source ones will do the migration of test cases, test plans, and test suites as well. There's some little tricky things with it, but it should be documented. So, so the holistic answer is yes, you can.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that's the end of our question period. I know we've run 20 minutes over. Thank you very much for your questions. Asif, would you like to say some concluding comments?
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us today. It was a pleasure seeing so many of you show up. We had several hundred people engaged in this process, so we really appreciate it. If there's anything we can do, please reach out to us at info@modernrequirements.com, unless you already have a buddy at Modern Requirements. And Martina, thank you so much for joining us for this excellent presentation. Thank you all. Bye-bye.